everybody! So today is Sunday, that means it's time for family movie night, and this week I am taking on a challenge. This is the first in my request video that I did where you get to pick the family movie night pick. This review was requested by Son of Mr. Peanut is the name of the commenter. And we talked about this, him and I, before, and he had wanted me to review Return to Oz, but I had been resistant to it, I'll explain, and he requested it for this family movie night thing. So I decided, it's just sort of, do it as a continuation of my Disney Scares month. I'll do an additional week, and so today we're looking at Return to Oz. And I thought I'd start out this video with a little clip from my friends over at Siskel and Ebert.
A bad adult film is one thing, but somehow a bad children's film is even worse, admit it. Because you sit there, even if you're a critic paid to sit there, you sit there thinking, what am I doing with my life watching this picture? And Return to Oz was such a lousy film that I'll always resent that it stole 2 hours of my life. When I'm dying, I want you to know, if you're at my funeral, I want you to know, I'll be there thinking, I could have lived 2 hours longer, happier.
I'll say a few words over your grave. He would have had 2 hours more happiness if it hadn't been for Return to Oz.
Thank you very much.
So it's pretty strong language from particularly Gene Siskel about this movie. And I have to say, I echoed that feeling for a long time in my life. It was a movie that was definitely way too scary for the young Rachel Wagner. And I for a long time, it was the most negative experience I'd ever had at watching a movie. It was just too scary, particularly the scenes with electroshock therapy and a scene with a hallway of heads. It was just too much for young me. And so I had a really bad feeling about this movie, and I didn't really want to review it. And so I went into it very cautiously, and I have to say, I don't think that the movie is as bad as Gene and Roger seem to think it was. I don't think that it is a bad movie, really. It's just not a movie that's particularly in my style, and particularly one that I like, but I can see why other people like it, and so I think I can recommend the movie, but just, I think it's possible to sort of recommend a movie, but then openly admit, it's just not really for me. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. And so that's how I kind of feel about Return to Oz. And so let's talk about it a little bit. This is set after The Wizard of Oz, the events in the 1939 original film, which I have reviewed already for Family Movie Nights. You want to check out that review. This is a masterpiece, and I love that movie so much. I love the songs. I love the message of home and family being what really saves you in the end. I love the relationships that she gains between all of herself and the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion and everything else, and how the answer to her problems was always within herself, and she just needed to believe in it. She needed to believe in herself, and all those messages I just love so much. I love all the production design. I love all of this. I love everything about The Wizard of Oz, pretty much. And so here's this Return to Oz, and this was a totally different vision, a totally different thing, and supposedly this is more like the books. Now, I've heard that it's actually really not that much like the book in reality, that they stray a lot away from it. So I don't know what is really true or not. I haven't read the books, so I can't say. Directed by Walter Murch, and this movie was a huge flop. It only made $11 million on a $28 million budget, and it was critically panned, as you saw with Siskel and Ebert. It did get an Academy Award for the visual effects, but that was it. It was a big disappointment for Disney. I'll start off with some of the strengths of the movie. So Dorothy in this film ends up going back to Oz, and Oz is kind of almost in sort of an apocalyptic kind of state. It's really ran down. The Yellow Brick Road is all kind of torn up. All are kind of ruled by this gnome king who is kind of controlling everybody. And then there's this princess named Princess Mombi who has this powder of life that she uses to control things, and she has these heads that she takes people, she removes their heads, and then she puts them on as her own head. And I think that this movie is particularly strong in the last half hour. I think it finally starts to have a little bit more fun once you actually kind of, it becomes Dorothy squaring off against the gnome Gnome King. So the visual effects are really cool in that sequence, and she's trying to save the Scarecrow, who's been made into an ornament, which is kind of sad to me. Like, all of the characters in the original film are basically they're like turned to stone or into an ornament or whatever, and that, I don't know, that bums me out. But anyway, it's a little bit more fun as she's kind of trying to figure out which ornament is the Scarecrow, and trying to kind of defeat the Gnome King. I think that gets to some of the spirit of the original film and just starts to have sort of a lighter, more enjoyable tone. So those things work. The visual designs, I think, the visual effects are great. I think they hold up pretty well, actually, here. The Rock, the Gnome King, I think, looks really good. The other visual effects, the production design looks really cool and different. It's very kind of Tim Burton-y. If you like that kind of visual aesthetic, I think you might like it. If you like something like the visual style of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children or something like that, this is very much along those lines. And so all this stuff is I think worthwhile, and it's worth watching, and it is kind of cool to see like a different take on this same world of Oz, and a different kind of horror sort of style for this story. Where I think that it has big problems is definitely the opening act. I think is very hard for me to get through. It's just, to me, it feels very mean-spirited when Dorothy is sent to this clinic where she is put under electroshock therapy by these horrible people. Kind of resent Aunt Em for taking her there and leaving her there all alone, and it's just, I don't know, I just don't care for that at all. And she ends up escaping into the storm, and then she's carried off with this other girl into this river, and she almost drowns. It's just too much. I think it feels overbearing and heavy and depressing, and I just don't really like that. I mean, one of the great things about the original film is that you have, right from the beginning, you have a message of hope. That there is somewhere over the rainbow. There is something better. There's something to hope for, and you just don't feel that. And so it starts off this movie with a very sort of downbeat, depressing tone, and it has a hard time kind of lifting itself up after that, I think. And then after she gets to Oz, it's kind of just one either scary or sad kind of thing that she meets after another. Whether it's the wheelies that are really scary, whether it's the Princess Mombi, who is terrifying with her hallway of heads, in my opinion. And so it's really not until I think that she meets the Gnome King and things, and she meets Jack, and Mr. TikTok has a few little bits of fun, but it still just feels so downbeat and so morose. It just is kind of a downer, I think, to watch. And I think that's what makes books kind of like this and movies kind of like this so hard. It kind of reminds me of most of the Roald Dahl movies. I think the problem with Roald Dahl is his books aren't very cinematic, in my opinion. His books are just, you need to add whimsy, you need to add sort of a little bit of hope and lightness to his movies. The lead performance by Fairuza Balk as Dorothy, I just thought she was really flat and unemotive, and just like, she's facing these horrible things, and I feel like her response should be stronger on almost every instance. She should be horrified, and I just feel like she's kind of and certainly no Judy Garland. I mean, when Judy Garland is in the castle with the Wicked Witch, and she sees Aunt Em and she starts crying. I mean, that is, I think, a very underrated acting moment. It's brutal, and so I think that it's just tough when you have something so great to compare it to, and it just has so many tonal problems, this movie. But if you can kind of get beyond that and appreciate a different vision, and like I said, I think once it gets to that final 30 minutes or so, it is a lot more enjoyable, and the visual effects are worth seeing. So overall, I would recommend it. I definitely would recommend giving it a shot, giving it a watch, because it may be your cup of tea. It's just not particularly mine. But I did like it better than I remembered it. It's certainly not one of the worst movies ever made, like I might have thought before. So anyway, I don't recommend it for small children. I recommend it for older kids and teenagers, but you know, everybody's different, I guess. You'll just have to decide for yourself. So thanks so much. Please subscribe to my channel, and I will talk to you later. Bye.